Have you ever felt so overwhelmed as an autistic adult that you just shut down? In this video, I'm going to break down what a shutdown is for autistic adults, what causes us to shut down, what a shutdown looks like, and how to recover from a shutdown, as well as how our allies can help us recover from shutdowns. Sounds like a lot to get through, but we'll get through it together on this video. So now let's get started. Hey, Define Yourselfers, I am the Confident Autistic from theconfidentautistic.com. If this is the first time you are watching one of my videos, welcome. I'm an autistic adult, late diagnosed, a multi-certified life coach, and an advocate for autistic adults who is on a mission to empower you to embrace autism confidently. You can show your support for my mission by liking, sharing, and commenting on this video. But the best way to show your support is by subscribing to this channel. And when you do not forget to click on the bell to be notified when new videos are posted and when I go live with a weekly Q&A live stream. Let's start the conversation today by defining what a shutdown is. A shutdown is a protective response that occurs when an autistic adult, like you and me, is overwhelmed by sensory, emotional, or cognitive input. While meltdowns are a more obvious reaction to being overwhelmed, because they're often loud and it could create a scene and it's an outward expression, shutdowns are a more muted response because it's more of an inward expression for our feelings of being overwhelmed. At this point, you're probably wondering, why do we go into shutdown? Well, there's a pretty simple reason for this. A shutdown is a coping mechanism that protects us from further stress and stimulation. Now, we autistic adults can experience shutdowns for several reasons, including sensory overload. Being overwhelmed by excessive sensory input like loud noises, bright lights, strong smells, or crowded spaces can cause us to essentially shut down. Another factor that can cause us to experience a shutdown is overwhelming social situations. When we find ourselves in any scenario with high levels of sensory input, unpredictable social dynamics, and this could be a large crowd, loud noises, bright lights, or a lack of structure, we suddenly find ourselves in an overwhelming social situation. Now, some better examples of a overwhelming social situation include a busy party, a crowded conference, or a spontaneous group outing with little prior information. Now, I've had shutdowns, and my main ones happen at busy parties and crowded conferences. And it probably would happen at a spontaneous group outing. I think it has ones. I don't do too many of those, so I don't know for sure, but those do happen to me. Now, as an autistic adult, when we experience an overwhelming social situation, our brain can become overloaded with sensory and emotional input, and that leads us to experiencing a shutdown. Stress is another contributing factor that can lead to a shutdown. Because along with sensory overload and overwhelming social situation, unrealistic expectations, life changes, communication challenges, and catastrophizing can cause stress for autistic adults. And when this happens, when we're having stress, and when the stress becomes too much for us to handle, that is when we can go into shutdown. Anxiety can also lead to shutdowns. See, anxiety is one of the most common co-occurring conditions for autistic adults like you and me, with up to 50% of us also meeting the criteria for anxiety. Now, there are several factors that can cause anxiety, including sensory processing difficulties, uncertainty, social situations, difficulty identifying our emotions, feeling misunderstood, and obviously the big one, masking. As for stress, when anxiety becomes too much for us to handle, it can cause us to shut down. A sudden disruption to our routines can trigger a shutdown. Now, routines are very important to many autistic adults, as routines provide us with predictability and structure in our lives. I know that routines are very important to me, and if mine even gets disrupted slightly, I become discombobulated. Now, what is a sudden disruption? Well, let me explain what that is to you. A sudden disruption in a routine for an autistic adult refers to an unexpected change in our daily schedule or familiar pattern of activities. Even small deviations from our routines can be difficult to manage and have the potential for us to experience a shutdown. Now that we talked about what a shutdown is and what causes a shutdown, let's discuss the warning signs we need to be aware of that tells us that we're on the verge of a shutdown. And there are several warning signs that we need to be aware of, and they include emotional overwhelm. Now, emotional overwhelm is when we're feeling anxious, irritated, or confused. Sensory overload. Now, this, we're going to know we're into sensory overload when we're engaging in stemming behaviors or pulling away from activities. That's how we can tell we're in sensory overload, that is, and we could be heading towards a shutdown. Another warning sign that we need to be aware of is physical exhaustion. So when we're feeling lethargic or having a headache or experiencing stomach issues, that could be a sign we're heading towards a shutdown. Disassociation. And this, for me, when this happens, I know I'm really close to a shutdown. And disassociation means we feel that we're cut off from or numb to emotions. We just feel like we're there. And to me, it's like I'm watching a movie and I have no feeling inside of me. It's like at times I will actually say to myself, "Where am I? What's going on?" Because I am that disassociating from the environment that I'm in. Additionally, retreating can be another sign a shutdown may be imminent. And retreating means that you're wanting to hide away somewhere that's dark and alone, or curl up in a ball, or curl up in bed, or even curl up in the fetus position, whatever works for you. But that is retreating. And when we start feeling that or start doing that, that's a sign we could be heading for a shutdown. Communication difficulties can also be a warning sign of an impending shutdown. And this means if you start to have trouble speaking or making eye contact. Now, for some of us, we don't do eye contact to begin with, so that's fine. Or we do have trouble speaking, and that can be fine. And if that's the case, when you're noticing an increased difficulty with speaking or an increased difficulty with making eye contact, that can be a sign you may be heading towards a shutdown. And last, but certainly not least, a loss of skills. And this means forgetting simple tasks or behaviors can be a warning sign of a shutdown, could be a warning sign of an impending meltdown, could be something you are going through when you're having autistic burnout. So this one could mean a lot of different things, but it is one of the things that can represent or tell us that we're about to encounter is a shutdown. Now let's talk about how we can tell when we are in a shutdown as autistic adults. During a shutdown, we often appear quiet, disengaged, or unresponsive due to our nervous system reaching its limits. When we are experiencing a shutdown, we may withdraw from social interactions, withdraw from stimuli. We may feel emotionally numb or detached and feel like we suddenly have no energy at all and we just want to sleep. Additionally, during a shutdown, we may find it difficult to speak, and in some cases, we may become, as I mentioned earlier, unresponsive. During shutdowns, we may also experience a reduction in physical movement or even become still, as well as experiencing struggles to process information or to respond to stimuli. When we are in shutdown, there's a few strategies that we can do to help ourselves get through this time in our life. During a shutdown, we should retreat to a calm, low stimulation environment. Now, the best places to retreat to, that is a quiet, dark space with minimal social interaction. Our allies who wish to support us during a shutdown should try to provide us with a calm, quiet space with minimal sensory input. Now, this is kind of important, especially if we're having a shutdown and we're a guest at someone's home, because we don't know their house. We don't know if we're allowed in that room. It would be nice if Allah could help direct us somewhere quiet, and maybe that could be a room, maybe that could be out in the back patio on the front porch, whatever. But it could help us find that, identify that, and get ourselves there. Now, Allah should also allow us time to recover without any pressure. So, in other words, if we're coming out of a shutdown or in a shutdown, we don't need an ally telling us, oh, come on, you get it together. Let's get back in the party. We don't need that. We need that space. It could be maybe a minute or two. For some of us, it could be 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. We need that alone time and that space, and we need that respected before our allies try to interact with us. Allies should also communicate with us gently. Like I said, don't say, oh, come on, hurry up. You're missing the fun part of the party. No, we need some gentle support. And when I say communicate gently, don't talk down to, if you're an ally watching this, don't talk to a autistic adult as if you're talking to a child. That's humiliating. That's embarrassing. That's degrading. Don't do that. Talk to us like we're adults and all, but have a reassuring tone in your voice. Also, be sure to respect our need for space. Now, I mentioned, don't jump in and start talking to us right away. And while we're doing that, maybe give us a few moments alone, because we often, many of us, when we go through a shutdown, are feeling embarrassed, and we don't need an audience watching us go through a shutdown. So we may need that time alone. So please respect that space. And of course, our allies should offer us reassurances that our feelings are valid. And so, in other words, don't say to someone, "Oh, you're just being oversensitive about something." And maybe in your life, that's something that you don't get stressed out about. You don't have the sensory issues that we have. Be respectful. We're all different people. When the shutdown is over, take some time to identify potential triggers that cause you to experience a shutdown. You want to know what these potential triggers are beforehand, before you engage them again. So you can develop coping mechanisms to prevent shutdowns from occurring as often. Might not be able to prevent every single shutdown, but you can at least minimize it, which means you're going to be more engaged in the world, and you're going to feel happier, and it's going to build confidence in yourself. Now, some coping strategies you might want to develop include these. All right. For me, noisy environments are very difficult for me, especially if I go to gatherings, like family gatherings or whatever, or if we're going to go out to a restaurant and eat, and restaurants can be really noisy. What I do as a coping mechanism before I go, I give myself about, depending on how long the event's going to be, I give myself anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour of just relaxing, quiet time. Whatever I want to do to relax. And then I know that when the event's over, I can come home to my safe spot and relax again. That's the type of coping mechanism I'm talking about. That's just one example. There's others for other types of sensory stimuli, whatever causes you to have your shutdowns. But that's just an example. You can build your own. Now you could do this, um, identifying potential triggers either by yourself or with the help of an ally. And what I call this part of life, when I have something like this happens to me, I call it an internal debriefing. I review what happened because I want to learn from my challenges so I can be better prepared and equipped in the future. And that's an important thing to do, because when you do that, you're going to have less shutdowns, like I mentioned a moment ago, and that's going to give you more confidence as an autistic adult. Now it's your turn. Share your experiences with shutdowns and your thoughts on shutdowns in the comments in this video, or join the conversation right now in our Facebook group, Autistic Adults Embracing Autism. A link to that group, as well as directions on how you can get a free resource from my website, is in the video description. Just scroll down to the section that says resource links. So until next time, I'm Chris Mitchell, aka The Confident Autistic, inviting you to embrace autism confidently. Join me live Thursday nights for the Confident Autistic Live, where I answer your questions, we discuss this week's videos, offer support, and more. The fun starts Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time in the US of A. Be sure to click the bell when you subscribe to the channel to be notified when the party begins.